Words like thunder breaking through the haze. Truth in echo sets the world ablaze with faith unshaken, and a voice so bold defying shadows that are icy cold. Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might, defeating darkness, standing tall and proud. Faith in God rings out clear and loud. Chains are falling with every spoken word. Justice rises, every line is heard. From the ashes, hope begins to climb. The sound of freedom breaks through time. Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might, defeating darkness, standing tall and proud. Faith in God rings out clear and loud. No fear, no falter, the fire burns bright. Every word a spark, igniting the fight against the void where shadows creep. A voice of courage wakes those asleep. Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might, defeating darkness, standing tall and proud. Faith in God rings out clear and loud. Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might. What? Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might. Might like thunder through the fire burst. Words like thunder breaking through the haze. Words like thunder breaking through the haze. Truth in echo sets the world ablaze with faith unshaken, and a voice so bold defying shadows that are icy cold. Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might, defeating darkness, standing tall and proud. Faith in God rings out clear and loud. Chains are falling with every spoken word. Justice rises, every line is heard. From the ashes, hope begins to climb. The sound of freedom breaks through time. Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might, defeating darkness, standing tall and proud. Faith in God rings out clear and loud. No fear, no falter, the fire burns bright. Every word a spark, igniting the fight against the void where shadows creep. A voice of courage wakes those asleep. Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might, defeating darkness, standing tall and proud. Faith in God rings out clear and loud. Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might. What? Microphone of mayhem roaring through the night, spreading truth and light with holy might. Might like thunder through the fire burst. Words like thunder breaking through the haze. Words like thunder breaking through the haze.
All right, welcome. Anyone here, please? Yeah. Go ahead and say hello. And uh, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, yada yada yada. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Anyways, hopefully I'll be able to do this. Apparently, right now, temporarily, I'm using back to cell phone network. So, and it's currently being reworked, and with an update not until completion, not until 9 a.m. in the morning. So, I will try to get this stream going, and if there's any problems, then I'll probably just have to try again tomorrow after that's all done. But in the meantime, sit back, buckle up. This is going to be kind of fun to listen to, because last week was very, very interesting. And for those that don't know, my daughter did come home. And but let's get into how that happened. And a lot of it, well, the majority of it was my wife and her attorney. My attorney wasn't, my attorney jumped in, but was probably the lowest on the totem pole to helping. And my daughter's attorney did a pretty good. So welcome to the stream. And those that are on, that end up watching on the replay, this is going to be interesting to hear. So, a week ago, last Monday, we finally had the hearing that to go over the basis for removal, and basically, if they had a good enough basis, whether or not she should be returned home, my daughter should be returned home, or kept. Now, it was, it was what I will mostly go over what I was able to hear, because I was barely allowed to appear via Zoom. Apparently, they were still trying to fight that part, even after I pulled a video. I will say that the reason the video is now in the members only, back into members only, that was pulled, is the final outcome, besides my daughter's return, was dismissed without prejudice. Now, let's recap how it got there. I appeared via Zoom, which was buggy at best, and I lost audio, so I missed a lot of things at worst. And, well, let's kind of go over what happened on the witness stand that I was able to hear and see, and or see, depending upon the connection. The department, DFPS/CPS, and their attorney I'll just say, not only with there two, there were three witnesses called. Basically, the initial investigator or whatever that was coming to our home that my wife has admittedly, and for good reason, cursed out. And also was the one submitting it was her name that was attached to the documents regarding updates of my daughter to the court. Um, then there was the new caseworker that was, well, this isn't, well, then it was the person who called 911. And then they had, um, pardon my memory a little bit because there's been so much going on. But the main other key person that the department had was the newer caseworker that did the interview type thing. And now, technically, I can start mentioning names, but I'm going to hold off just a little bit before I go that far. But I'll just go over the kind of rehash the testimony on the stand. I noticed the majority of the questions that were asked by the ADA, that is Assistant District Attorney, not American with Disabilities Act coordinator. Let me clarify that part. Focused a lot of their questioning on basically trying to subvert and make me out to be a liar from my videos and streams of what I have said. Some of the conjecture I was coming up with, which were my opinions, and they were always in there. But the funny thing is, it wasn't so much the questions they asked; it's how they asked them that left openings. But that's neither here nor there. That was just more of a way to attempt to derail the hearing. But my wife's attorney, my daughter's attorney, and basically my attorney, in that order of who did the most. My wife's attorney did the most, and my daughter's attorney had pulled some pretty good examining questions and cross-examine, how you want to refer to it. And then my attorney asked a couple of poignant questions that kind of drove things home a little bit. And I don't know, I should have wrote notes down, but it's got dark now, so I wouldn't be able to see my own notes to try to go over this. So, but basically, as far as the questioning went for the workers, both of the agency employees, they hadn't inspected the home and or knew what was in our RV/our home. So that kind of that point was kind of driven home a little bit. We did have to suffer at the hands of the court a minor home intrusion/inspection, but it was basically for any serious concerns, such as unsecure firearms or unsecure medications. Hard medications. RV life is a little different than most, and that was basically the direction of the court. Anything that was serious safety concerns. But then again, Texas is an open carry state. Texas is a very pro-gun state. So the whole unsecure firearms thing, I mean, my daughter just turned 13. Well, most kids, and my daughter would have, if the opportunity had presented itself, are taught firearm safety from the moment they're able to pick up a BB gun. So, yeah, it's just, you know, liberal nonsense. Um, but let's get back to some of the key points from the testimonies. But the fun one was the witness against us. Oh my goodness. Oh, of course, like I said, the department was focused on questions that went into what I had said in my streams, such as off about the specific the individual that I saw make the 911 call at the time, and that the cops, remember, they even said so. One video, it was a reliable witness. You love this. The reliable witness. Well, the agency's questions for the reliable witness involved whether or not that reliable witness worked specifically for the agency or for us, for the Austin Police Department. Not if they had any what they call T-Cold training, law enforcement training in the state of Texas, or any other department. Those questions were conveniently not asked, or asked if they worked in any capacity or were known as an officer of any type. And then the name that they gave, that witness gave, I turned around and I researched, and it doesn't exist except two people that clearly aren't that person, and neither that's in the state of Texas. There are two other people with the same name that was given on the stand, and one's over 50 years old, definitely not that person, and the other one has their primary profile is extremely short hair, like a military high and tight, and therefore definitely not a long brunette with hair down to their gluteus maximus. And definitely neither one of them are in Austin. And trust me, I Google search, and in that Google search, I mean, I was checking, basically just about everything but X was pulling up for search results. Anyways, that's neither here nor there, other than possible, giving the wrong name because they're don't want to be found out for who they really are. And whatnot. But one of the first questions that were asked of the reliable witness. Now, mind you, I must give this piece of information, is that the front tables, because there's a set of 4 tables in the courtroom, to, my attorney's table, my wife's attorney's table, basically my daughter's attorney and guardian ad litem's table, and then the agency's table. And the second one of both of those were the front tables closest to the witness stand. Closest to the judge's podium and witness stand. One of the first things that the reliable witness did was misidentify my wife as me in the courtroom from about 15 feet away. Now, mind you, the incident happened where that person was on a trail that was closer to 40 feet away. With tall grass, you couldn't see the sidewalk, couldn't even see the tires on the RV. For those that can go back and look at the video I did to help show what was. So the first thing, when out the gate, the reliable witness misidentified me versus my wife. Okay. And granted, I was on Zoom. I had video turned on. I have for those that have seen me when I do open the camera up, I have a Santa Claus beard going on here. Of course, my wife does not. I am quite round. Um, so credibility basically shot out the gate. Oh, let me back up and rewind a little bit. One of the other things, since the first witness being the one agency worker that's the one in the blurred out video, it ended up bringing it up to the court regarding my daughter being in handcuffs for over an hour. And oh boy, was the judge steamed on that one. I don't know if the judge did any follow up on that too much, but yeah. Was not happy to find out that, basically this reliable, and then eventually hearing the reliable witness saying, doing the misidentifying, and we'll get into more of that just a second. but, um, but and they said 90 minutes, but and then allegedly the agency didn't even find. Well, the agency told the court they didn't even find out about the police incident until the following Monday. It happened on Thursday. The agency didn't find out till Monday, but yet they were there on Saturday with my daughter's attorney. And I specifically told that person about the incident. Now, while it is brought up in other things, none of the attorneys really kind of drilled that part home. Yeah, it was they did latch on, but the attorneys did latch on to where they needed to latch on to that really, so it was something that could do a little bit. Didn't, the judge got mad at the end of the reliable witnesses testimony. I wanted to ask a couple of more because I didn't hear much of some of the things I had, and I was admonished to make sure I talk. It's kind of difficult because your text message to your attorney quickly on the same device. You're trying to watch the court. It's kind of difficult. But anyways, I digress. That, and it was also mentioned that basically, even though they were the ones still submitting paperwork, or at least paperwork that I received copies of. Can you hear me now? I hope you can hear me. Like I say, there's possible network issues. That and I might get a little muffled or a little quieter as I turn my head away, looking in different directions. So, the reliable witness. Oh boy. I mean, the agency, of course, asked the questions about whether or not they were a government employee in a roundabout way, without asking deep enough, you know, to, like I say, again, sidetrack the court and make me look bad. I didn't get called on to testify, so my attorney didn't feel it was necessary with everything that they had to that point. Um, but after because it basically went the initial agency employee, and then the other agency employee, and then my wife, if I remember the order correctly. I might be slightly off on the order, but uh, anyways, so questions were asked, and basically the one that got the reliable witness to misidentify was my wife's attorney, and he drilled down on it a little bit, and then my daughter's attorney took note. Like say, audio and stuff was in and out for me for the Zoom. But part of what I witnessed was basically the whole statements of me hitting and knocking my daughter down. Then the reliable witness said I must have shoved her and knocked her down. Then she basically admitted she assumed that's what happened because she didn't see anything. She just assumed it. Yeah. So someone made a 911 call assuming a domestic violence situation was allegedly going on, or however you want to refer to it. A domestic situation was going on, assuming something without saying anything. Because, for example, one of the questions my daughter's attorney asked was, "Well, how do you know she didn't? My daughter didn't fall to the ground." Well, I don't know. That's possible. I don't know. I didn't see anything. Really. Um, but basically, she was made to look quite the fool on the stand. Yet that's the reliable witness that the cops showed up for. And yeah, and like I said, misidentified my wife from 15 feet away, but yet supposedly assumed that something happened from over 40 feet away. And hearing things allegedly over top of a noisy generator. Okay. Then some other things came up. I believe I mentioned it, previously that, well, yeah, I did mention it. How my daughter was basically removed from one group home in Waco and then basically moved to a different group home in Houston that is further away from Austin. And that was under the direction of the 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 newer of the site. Well, there was some improper. Well, one, as it's been brought up about, it's statewide. It's the agency's policy for community-based care, which definitely did not happen. And yeah, I'll probably remember things and go into more detail later regarding the so-called reliable witness, but that's the key. The key things are those. Um, but on the last employee, the second employee, agency, guaranteed agency employee, caseworker. Um, Going off of memory here, memory here. It's been a long day. Anyways, some of the key takes were. My phone's getting a little hot. Uh, some of the key takeaways were the fact that they weren't following procedure on the change of um, placement. They didn't notify the guardian ad litem nor the my daughter's attorney about the change of placement when they're supposed to, and they're supposed to actually discuss and actually have a discussion over it for the best interest of the child, which wasn't done. Conveniently. And if the stream does get cut short, I'll come back I'll come back and finish it up later. Just fair warning to everybody. But so agency employees weren't following proper procedure. Between the two employees, it was said that basically one handed off to the other on the date on the day my daughter was removed. Basically the day my daughter was removed from our home and our care. But yet the initial employee was still the one submitting documents to the court. The other caseworker was not. That was kind of weird. It was asked about why that caseworker went on, why the second caseworker went on leave. It was mentioned that they did go out of the country, and that it wasn't. And one of the questions was not. It was directly from anything myself or my wife said or did, not about streams or about anybody else or about class. They didn't ask that part of the question. If it was anyone my wife directly said or did, and conveniently that answer was no. We didn't make any direct answer or anything. Yeah, the way the questions were asked were very, basically trying to misguide the court and attempt to make me look bad. Because I mean, basically they just did not like the videos that the mayhem videos and other things that have been put out. Boy, that just got there. Anyways, so and proper procedures and policies were followed. They would follow the proper procedures and policies, even of how attorneys for the child are supposed to be notified, because they're the ones that have to travel to meet with their clients, which are the children that are in the system. Uh, and of course, I mentioned it multiple times. I basically insulted my meemaw. In this Texas, you don't insult someone's meemaw, especially if Siri Sheldon. Yeah. Well, basically by constantly Back down a little. Here, noisy family, forgive me. How about now? Can you hear me now? Oh, let's move away from the fan just a little bit. Maybe you can hear me a little better. Uh, that fan is kind of noisy. It doesn't do too bad for what it is. All right. So where was I when I dropped? But yeah, their own policies and procedures. There's, especially in inter-A cooperation and with attorneys, was non-existent. Off the top of my head, right this second, I forget some of the things that. Oh, my wife's attorney drilled into against the caseworkers specifically, but I know on the second caseworker, like I said, what I heard was in and out, so I didn't get to hear everything. But my my attorney with the second caseworker asked a couple of questions about because the second caseworker kept harping on education and let's see, what was it? Medical, which wasn't really existent, and let's see, education, and a couple other things. But I mean, just but let's see. Give me a second. Yeah. Let's throw some music up for a moment just to. I forgot to switch something over. Okay. Let's just take a moment to catch my breath a second here. I'll get right back to that here in just a second.
justice, they don't hear our calls. Cloak of darkness shields their crime. Families shattered in the dead of time. Rules rewritten, hearts torn apart. The lies they tell, a master's art. Dirty hands pulling the strings. Truth lost in the chaos it brings. Behind the gavel, behind the walls, they don't hear justice, they don't hear our calls. Courtrooms echo with twisted games. Judges blind to the fire and flames. The laws they twist, the lives they break. All for control, all for their sake. They scribble verdicts on crumpled dreams, silence the cries that burst at the seams. Who will stand, who will fight when justice falls into the night?
Okay, now I remember what the other thing was. All right. My brain catch up and my breath. Okay. My attorney asked a couple of questions because that one caseworker kept harping about how my daughter was allegedly a year behind in education, blah, blah, blah. And some of the things they asked was, well, what testing was done? Well, they didn't do any placement testing with her really before putting her in public school. Oh, wait, they shouldn't have done that because community-based, she was homeschooled and they just throw her in at the end of the school year. Which is but you're not supposed to do that in Texas. Especially when they didn't do proper stuff for the shoe enroller. Anyways, but my attorney, because he kept going off and, but because of the alleged, it was kind of hard to tell what was the reason for removing my daughter, but because of that reliable witness that at this point had already, proven she was about as reliable as a finding a truffle near a mushroom in Texas. Okay, you ain't gonna find it. It ain't gonna happen. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, not very real at all. About reliable as a horse with a stone in its hoof. But anyways, so was harping on that and a couple of things, but just kept making it sound like we were neglecting our daughter. And one of the questions that, because it's something I brought up in a video, and I've tried to get my my attorneys to pay attention to is, and she asked him if corporal punishment was illegal in Texas. At first, he says, yes, it is illegal. Until he goes, and then eventually he does recover, and basically means, basically the definition of was above and beyond corporal punishment, broken bones, bleeding, bruising. And my attorney, one of the attorneys, because they weren't switching the camera back and forth so I could see exactly who was talking, asked, is corporal punishment illegal in Texas? Yeah, it's illegal. And then he doubled back, and then they asked, well, was Ursel bleeding? Was there any bruising or broken bones? No. Okay. So, that kind of helped drive that point home. Not only was, someone assumed something happened that didn't, but even what they assumed, there was no evidence to back up their assumption. And then went on about the educational part, because they're like, oh, well, she's showing that she was behind education wise in reading and math, mostly math. It's like, I know my daughter's really good, so that's kind of, she picks up math pretty good. That was kind of weird. They kept harping more on math than on her reading skills. And yeah, her handwriting skills still have a lot to lack. But, in this day and age, it's not something that's really harped on in schools anymore because of tablets and computers and whatnot. So it was asked of him if he knew of any agency guidelines or standards regarding educational neglect. No. It's not, you couldn't think of anything. I don't know of any. Well, did you know that homeschooling is not illegal in the state of Texas? And you can't, it's illegal to remove a child just because they're being homeschooled. And basically, at that point, had kind of shut him up. Oh, welcome, Steve. I'm just kind of rehashing what happened in court last Monday. At least touching on a lot of the key highlights. And then, it was kind of interesting, the kind of stuff that when my wife got put on the stand. And of course, my wife knew what she was doing and knew not to say too much or give, whatnot, but give away too much. But basically, the questioning that the agency's attorney did to my wife, while attempting to make me look bad, actually makes them look bad. Because the main thing that has changed regarding whether or not my wife would be willing to participate in court-ordered services, they don't realize was, well, they're coercing and extorting by stealing our child, by kidnapping our kid. That was the one key thing that changed, but I don't think it clicked in their little noggins on that one. Asking those kinds of questions. And the main thing that my wife made sure to bring up was, when I was, fighting them on the medical thing, was my wife kept referencing Title III, which is not ADA Title III. It's referencing CPA, Family Court Title III, which is a Title III removal of a child. It is more juvenile court. As when court, the judges have the authority to make that order that they did to try to order, because otherwise, when you think about it, if they really thought they had the authority, why Why didn't that court date take place that was supposed to take place 2 business days after the cops showed up and me being held in contempt? Oh wait, because here's the key thing. Instead of me going to court on that Monday and being held in contempt, even though that Monday kind of, basically that same day more or less has gotten pushed back till the Friday of that week and then eventually pushed off, passed as they call it around here, passed off. Um, Instead of taking me to try to hold me in contempt for not violating the law that they were violating, let's send somebody out that is a not so reliable witness to make a false 911 call, to have the cops show up, gloved up, ready to do what they can to see if they can't throw me in jail for a different reason. Think about that one. uh, so yeah, when you think about that and put it all together, I mean, because as they say, what is that? Occam's razor. The most simplest explanation is probably the most true explanation. Well, the simplest explanation is that's what's going on. That's what's been going on because during my daughter's removal, that 48-hour abandoned vehicle sticker. But our vehicle's never been abandoned; it's always been occupied and occasionally started up. And then when we get over here to this spot, that same officer that did the 48-hour sticker or ordered the 48-hour sticker turns around station. And my wife went to her portion of it, and I'll just say I might hold off. I might wait to discuss some of that because I still got mine. My attempt to appear virtually for the same citation. So we'll see what transpires there. So that's gonna be it. But let's just say that I heard through the grapevine that the so-called reliable witness had a different name as an employee. They were known as a court officer in a different type of court at a different location. So, and a few other things go along with that. But that's what I've heard. That's what I'm sharing with y'all. And yeah, but let's see. Basically admitting on the stand, because here's the thing. In Texas, filing a false CPS report is a state felony that punishable up to 3 years in prison. But they usually get away with stuff like that. And of course, since it was dismissed without prejudice, if they continue finding ways to harass us, they could try to redo something else. a court officer, OFFICER, and yet in one report that wasn't even supposed to be done by the original CPS worker, that should have been done by the new CPS worker when he took over the case under their own testimonies. The first one said I allegedly said that I did say that I hit and knocked my daughter down, blah blah blah. But in the updated report, it mentioned generically the words and in lowercase, all lowercase, police officer. Any other prior reports to the court, such as the initial one at the end of December, specifically mentions officer names. That's kind of strange. And then, like I say, there was all sorts of problems with the reliable witness's testimony on the stand. And out the gate, she misidentified who the offender was that she allegedly saw shove or hit or whatever, my daughter to the ground. But I don't know of anyone from even 1,000 yards that could confuse me for my wife. If you've seen me and you see my wife, there's no way you can confuse the two of us. Because she admitted to allegedly never having seen my wife before court that day, allegedly. And allegedly had seen me walking with my daughter on the trails, or me, interacting with my daughter out on the trails or whatever there. Not realizing that, but also misidentifies my wife as me. And only had been up to that point, maybe between 5 and 7 times coming to the trails there to walk the trails. And no, she did not she does not own a dog. Key question, she does not own a dog. That's why the question was asked of her if she owned a dog. But yet, the 2 days after my daughter was taken, I saw her with a dog that behaved like it did not belong to her, trying to hide the fact of who she was. That it was that type of scenario. And then, of course, you've got things like even the Cajun officer mentioned in other videos, or in some of the videos. The one that's been part of the ones that's been harassing us. He qualifies as harassment because there's been more than one. It was twice in a row. He even admits to being on the force 23 years. So he definitely knew the officer that I reported to, Officer of Professional Accountability or whatever it is, /IA. So obviously they know each other. So therefore, it almost seems like it's all straight up retaliation. So, yeah, it's just. All right, so we've been streaming an hour. Things seem to be holding up a little bit at the moment, so take a moment, slap a song in here, and we'll come back and maybe do a little bit of question answer or something.
Shadows crawl but they can't hide. Truth cuts sharp like a blade untied. Light explodes in the endless fight. Angels rise in the dead of night. Mayhem roars with truth so bright. Crushing demons left and right. Evil flees from heaven's might. Angels of mayhem light ignite. Mayhem roars with truth so bright. Crushing demons left and right. Evil flees from heaven's might. Angels of mayhem light ignite. Flames of justice burn so wild. Darkness trembles like a child. Wings of fury tear the veil. Echoes shadow with a holy wail. Mayhem roars with truth so bright. Crushing demons left and right. Evil flees from heaven's might. Angels of mayhem light ignite. Thunder claps with righteous sound. Evil's empire tumbles down. In their eyes the stars ignite. Blazing trails of endless light. Mayhem roars with truth so bright. Crushing demons left and right. Evil flees from heaven's might. Angels of mayhem light ignite.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's very possible. I think it's highly probable that it's all been retaliation. Because anything that was exculpatory by the agency, yeah, they conveniently were leaving out of everything they submitted to the court. Yes, and that was some of the things that some of the questions that were brought up and tried to, as I had mentioned regarding being bullied, not just by kids at the home and at school, but even staff members, and having a Bible taken away from her and stuff. Some of the things that, again, and the questions from the agency's attorney were all about, since I had mentioned them before in streams and whatnot, and videos that I've done, they made sure to, again, try to sidetrack the court and ask questions in those regards, such as asking my wife, well, basically questions they should have been asking me because I was the one that was told over the phone. Technically my wife wasn't, so she didn't really hear it. I just shared to her, which is hearsay and inadmissible. But would it? One of the questions to my wife was, "Oh, would it surprise you that faith is in the name of the group home she was in?" Yeah, your point. I've worked for companies such as Covenant Transport. My first truck driving job out of the truck driving school. Yes, they are faith-based family that owns, or at the time owns the company. But that doesn't mean everybody that works under them, such as dispatchers and payroll and HR and drivers, are also of the same faith. And just because faith is in the name doesn't say which faith it is. But my wife play into, she didn't play into their little game on that. So I mean, like I said, they were trying. They were trying to sidetrack most of their questions that they literally had nothing to go on was to, and I don't know if any videos did get used, or at least it's my understanding that the videos were pulled up for the judge, including the one I was told to pull was apparently downloaded and sitting there for the judge for court. Um, and there were, because I literally didn't hear over the majority of my wife's testimony, questioning to her, but I did hear a few things, and some of that included, yeah. And then, of course, the fact that I went and saw a faith-based movie before she was, her placement was changed. It's like, in your point, what's that got to do with anything? I mean, it was all, I think it was all a way to try to obscure the truth. Oh, see, we did this. We took them to a faith-based movie. Uh, we took the children to a faith-based movie. Because literally it was the night before she was being changed placements. Um, oh look, faith is in the name. Yeah, and then of course quickly changing her placement after scheduling an in-person visit, and then canceling it because you're changing the placement, and instead of routing the placement change through the visit, on the way, like taking her, picking her up, taking her to the visit, and then taking her to the new placement. No, just directly to the new placement. Yeah. But it's my understanding there's already there's already been quite a few elsewise in the background that yeah, well, no matter what, this stuff's going to stay in the dark for long. And when it goes public, when really start when it really starts hitting the fan, yeah. Ruby, hold up just a moment. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I think the dog saw a frog and went chasing after it. There's been a frog hanging around. But yeah, it was quite interesting to see how it all went. But then the judge said taking things under advisement, set up, as I mentioned earlier. So if anybody showing up late, have to go back and catch up. Well, I know they're watching. I know they're probably even still gonna be watching this stream too, even though technically dismissed without prejudice means the unconstitutional gag order is no longer in effect. It's technically a resolution to the case, but since it was without prejudice, They do have a almost 2-week window of being able to file new charges. But that's not something that they do. They don't file new charges. They try to create a new docket with a new thing they're trying to force us to do, skipping over about 10 to 15 different parts of the process. And then to cover their tails, they create some sort of fake narrative. They bring in somebody to make assumptions, and they have a title, so therefore they're considered reliable. But the judge was going to take it under advisement, and then order the inspection. Now, that's another thing. Is, technically my daughter couldn't be returned home until after they came and made sure that it was safe. Even though, yeah, it makes no sense. She was removed without good cause, good reason, without probable cause. The testimony fell flat. So therefore, she was legally kidnapped. Okay, not just technically, under the law, that would fall as kidnapping. Okay, I don't care who you are. And then using her kidnapping to extort us into, complying with them. Me and the wife are disabled. That's a big no-no in the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title II. 28 CFR, Part 35.130. See, I've got it memorized now. They're not allowed to harass, coerce, retaliate. And that was another part was that one of the things that was mentioned at the beginning is that there was going to be, well, probably not now, but pending a disability hearing, ADA hearing for the, access, basically an ADA accessibility hearing on the matter. Even though basically they were trying to use my disabilities against me in open court. And they have by trying to block me from access. And we're basically doing the same thing and coercing my attention, But anyways, it, court was on last Monday. Was it, Monday? Yeah. It took all the way till afternoon, pretty much evening, before they could come out to do the quote unquote inspection. And then, and of course, it was too late to report back to the court that day. So all the reports went in on Thursday morning so the judge could finally make her ruling. And of course, the judge initially ruled court ordered services. But also on Wednesday, I got an email regarding basically they were jumping the gun again, and they even titled it wrong. But basically, what they're supposed to do at like 18 months for the review of custody, they turned around, the review of custody conference, no judge involved. They didn't even, the title itself, one didn't have my name in it, just my wife's. And it said hearing, permanency hearing with my wife's name in the title of the meeting, the alleged conference, which was phone or virtual. There was no in person anywhere, available. which is very difficult with my wife's side of the disability, which is why she goes in person because she has difficulty navigating, some of the digital divide a little bit. So we get into the conference to try to discuss what services might be needed, but the judge hasn't finished ruling, making that an official ruling yet. So one, they're jumping the gun. Two, usually the permanency part isn't even done until the case has been open at least 15 to 18 months, around 16 to 18 months. And basically, we've been harassed, and I straight up told him myself. Well, first, my wife got really upset with him over it all. It's like, and my attorney was like, well, they originally tried to schedule it a week out, but my attorney was going to be unavailable, so they scheduled it basically last Thursday, the day after the quote unquote inspection, and they scheduled before the judge even had the ruling. And yeah, things went sideways quick, and they realized they they were basically, they definitely put the cart way before the horse on things. And got upset with them. I got upset with them and said, hey, this is what y'all just done. This is what y'all just did. And it basically became agreed. They had a professionals only meeting. Because one of the things I brought up was that, because one of the things they were trying to push for unlawfully was like psychological mental health type nonsense on both me and the wife. I was like, you know what? If I need that kind of stuff, I'll go to the VA. And yeah, it'll take them 2 to 3 years and a federal subpoena to try to get my VA records on that kind of stuff. So they just, so they started to realize they really had a losing battle. So they discussed it, realized there's not a whole lot they have any leeway on to try to coerce us to do. And hold on us. So apparently the attorneys had a discussion and they convinced the agency's attorney and whatnot. Because, well, I'll talk about that later. Anyways, yeah. So needless to say, and then come to find out, the judge had ordered the court ordered services version of dismissal, which wasn't quite a full dismissal. It was returned to home and court ordered services, which of course, what services is the court going to order? Because they would have to go to the court to get an order for any and all services. Yeah, and I had trouble getting appointments with the VA to begin with. But anyways, so they realized, okay, dismissal without prejudice was a way to save face. I can say it's currently attempting to be worked on to have it changed from dismissal without prejudice to dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can't bring it up, because that's another thing that they were doing, and part of what they were trying to hold against us, because in the state of Texas, anything over 6 months old cannot be used against the parents. Period. But they were trying to use stuff that was like 9+ years old from other states against us. Basically, I mean, how many different ways can they violate Texas law? And of course, and let me point out, the reason why it was bouncing back and forth between the judge and the associate judge is because they're the only two judges that handle the CPS cases because they're doing what is called a model, MODEL court. Basically, with little to no oversight. So not only, yeah, and the associate judge was, reading on that stuff, was appointed to her position. So she wasn't elected, she was appointed, the associate judge. And yeah, and if you go into the campaign finances and stuff like that, you'll see, you kind of get an idea of why. It's all about political capital and less about the court. And I was my daughter when she came home, after she had been home a while and got past the jet lag. Um, Told me about some of the things that even my daughter, the New Yorker, came out in with the pre and post court conferences with the judge. Yeah, buddy. She got the she let the judge have it, both barrels, and some anti-aircraft fire from the rear. Uh, um, you know, one because yeah, not all education is just reading, reading, writing, and arithmetic. There's such as there's education such as you know government and civil responsibility, such as patriotism, uh, understanding your government, understanding your rights under your constitutions and things like that, and yeah, and of course the faith-based side of it. Apparently, my daughter called the judge a devil worshiper, believing the devil's lies. Basically calling CPS and them demons and devils. Yeah, makes a preacher daddy happy and proud. Uh, so definitely, uh, that's the basic gist of things. But I wanted to share how reliable the reliable witness wasn't. Uh, I think that old Upers song, "The Rusty Old Chevrolet," is a lot more reliable than that witness was. I mean, oh, definitely one of those you had to be there. And I hope I can get the transcripts, and even better if I can get audio and or video recordings of the court. I was not allowed to record myself for my purpose, for my purposes. But oh my goodness, because even if I recorded myself, I would have missed a lot because of network errors. But the majority of the question that took out all three of the agency's witnesses was my wife. My wife's attorney. Yeah, was a pit bull with a chew toy. But I know more than likely for me to get audio and video transcripts and things like that, it's going to cost money I don't have. Yeah, my channel's monetized now. Woo! Ooh, haven't made squat. But yeah, it's just, and we knew it was, everything was basically retaliation from the jump. But boy, go if we can. I believe my wife has been working on a lot of it, and basically, you're looking at least 15 to 20 people that could possibly end up with prison time. I'm so broke, attention owes me money. I can't afford to pay attention because it owes me money. uh, but anyways, uh, yeah, I could easily see at least 10 to 15 people, if not more, not only going to jail but possibly going to prison if Texas, if they would actually just enforce the laws on the books. Not even the new changes that are coming down the pike in the state of Texas. Just what is currently there between slap law, the Texas slap laws and CPS, and the false report law, laws and things like that. Hmm. Filing false statements to the court. Americans with Disability Act violations. Well, unfortunately, those do not generally entail jail time, but yeah, they don't look good for them. But so then my daughter was brought home at 9:30 p.m. on Thursday evening. So from even though court ordered her returned on Monday, and court was supposed to be like a 2 hour, 2 hours of court, and it was one afternoon, and my daughter was there in the courtroom. Well, it's not just false false reports, but those that well, it's a 3 hour drive from Houston back to Austin, and of course they're not going to do it in the middle of the day when they need to go screw up other families. Yeah. And so my daughter truly, so we had a belated Mother's Day, 13th birthday, combined with Father's Day for Sunday. My wife getting a Mother's Day makeup, my daughter getting her birthday makeup, and me having, me getting Father's Day all on Sunday, on Father's Day itself. But that's how it all played out. Man, at some point I'll probably go into more in depth of everything as I remember it and write it down, and you know and feel comfortable going into a lot more details. But for now, I wanted to give everyone an update to what transpired. All three in a day, because my daughter was My daughter was was kidnapped for almost 60 days. Well, actually, by the time she was returned home, yeah, was like maybe 2 or 3 days shy of 60 days. Because she was taken on April 16th, which now is 2 months ago. But May has 30, a couple of 30 months there. So she was taken on April and returned on the 12th, on June 12th. So real close to 60 days, and that's after an hour in handcuffs for no legal purpose, no lawful purpose. There was no law backing up why she needed to be in handcuffs for over an hour. And then a week later, using bogus allegations that caused her to, that part of the reason why she ended up in handcuffs for over an hour. And that's another thing, I don't think that reliable witness realized that she did that. Yeah, almost 60 days to return her home. And you got to realize it took over 45 days from the time of the emergency hearing to remove her to actually have a hearing about the facts, to actually go into the facts and testimony of what transpired. How many children and families does that kind of, you know, that kind of timing mess up? And part of the purpose of those model courts is to be more efficient, not more efficient for the agency and removal, but more efficient for the welfare and benefit of the child. What's in the best interest of the child. And when you look at look at what's in the interest of the child. It was all about what was the best interest of the agency, and or what was in the best interest of Austin Police Department to help cover up their misdeeds, or and keep them under wraps for as long as possible. So people, if you like, share, subscribe, join, thumbs up, especially on the videos for the the police videos, especially the one where my daughter got cuffed. Get that out there. Anybody that ends up watching this, put that out there. Let the world don't let it be slowed. Don't let them sweep it and hide it. And yeah, government is never efficient, but yeah. But I mean, literally, when it comes to the so-called model court, which is held on a different floor from the other cases, family cases in the family court. I mean, literally, if you were to search the docket for other family cases that are not in the model court, you can find them on the state or on the government-controlled website. The model court is over on its own little page, more hidden. And the worst part about all this is the primary judge, is in her little profile on the model court page. She herself is a parent. I wonder how she would feel if this kind of nonsense happened to her. And no, that's not a threat or a promise or anything like that. I'm just saying, she couldn't even it, put herself in the correct shoes. About the political prowess and not about and the political agendas that you and not about actually doing best interest of the child. Well, I mean, yeah, look at the CPS DFPS agency. Basically, in the course of our case alone, has basically broken, every law that was used. They broke. They misinterpreted and went exactly opposite of the law. They went exactly opposite and against the agency's statewide policies and procedures. Not notifying attorneys, involved with the child. The guardian ad litem and the attorney ad litem about placement changes, and they, and yeah, literally some of the stuff they used on the removal form that had me definitely befuddled was like, why is it mentioning, drug levels below a certain amount and certain things? No, that whole section that said, oh, the reason for removal is not one of these items was nothing but a freaking copy paste job from the actual law. Sorry, I had to do that so I could be able to see. I guess I'm trying to do this on the phone, so please bear with me a little. Yeah. Although it's mentioned, songs for my daughter and stuff like that. Well, in a way, all these mayhem songs are for my daughter regarding the corruption and things like that. She listens to them and she loves them. She likes the song, all these mayhem songs and the Shadows songs that are part and parcel with this that I've created. But yeah. Yeah, but watching the stream on the phone is a lot easier than trying to stream from the phone. Trust me, especially using Restream. Not exactly easy, but anywho's, getting close to 2 hours. Getting late for a lot of people, but because how can a reliable witness? I mean, there's assumption. It's one thing to make assumptions, but out the gate, you can't even identify the person you are making the accusations against. Out the gate. I mean, that is, oh my goodness. That was like, it was like, seriously? Did I just hear that? Did she just do it? Did what? I mean, but yeah, it's laughable. It's extremely laughable. The cops were called. She called the cops, and CPS took my daughter based upon her statements. Now, I don't know if she herself also called CPS or not, or if it was just something that was relayed from the police department over, or how that exactly worked. But needless to say, it's the reliable witness used to kidnap my daughter couldn't even make an identification proper. And I'm sorry, but I'm like the Michelin man plus the Pillsbury Doughboy with a Santa Claus beard. And my wife, one is 2 inches shorter, uh, is very much female and weighs half as much as I do. It's like the woman needed glasses or something and didn't have them. But from 15 feet away, half the distance, she made a misidentification. Oh, need I say more? No, it's not body shaming myself. A lot of my size is my health conditions, my disabilities have put, and the VA's way of prescribing and not paying attention to what the hell they're doing that blew me up quicker than a Macy's Day balloon. Okay. In fact, yeah, add a beard to that old timey toy one, the little not toy soldier, but yeah, like the old play school Fisher Price type toy balloon that they fly almost every year during the Macy's Day Parade. That chubby one. I'll admit that's about my body shape. What was yeah, it was basically misgendering and misidentifying my wife as me. The reliable witness that called not only called 911 to have the police show up and handcuff my daughter for over an hour, but also had my daughter was the reason my daughter was kidnapped for almost 60 days. From the time she was taken to the time she was returned, almost 60 days. I mean, literally like 58 days. 57, 58 days. And then basically screwed the pooch every which way from Sunday regarding visitations and everything. Couldn't spell my daughter's name correctly. Even, oh, here's one thing I did. when before leaving on leave for a week out of country, and then conveniently was back in time for court. Um, Even he didn't spell my daughter's name correctly, and he was my daughter's caseworker, or he was the caseworker on the case. I went so far as to the mobile number that that is assigned the as to call out the fact that my daughter's first name is named she's named after my Meemaw. Well, guess what? I have a copy of my Meemaw's headstone on my phone, on my devices, saved. I went and visited it. I do on occasion when I can. And it even says our Meemaw on her headstone. And I basically call them out because if you know anything about the South, especially in Texas, you don't mess with someone's Meemaw, especially if something's done in memory of their Meemaw. That's that's like a cardinal sin down here. Whether it's Georgia or any of the any of the southern states. Meemaw, you don't mess with Meemaw, whether she's alive or passed on. But they never spelt my daughter's name correctly. Maybe in the court documents, but that was the only place. But in any other communications, or when putting on how you put like how my name's here underneath my picture here on my stream, you could do basically the same thing on Zoom and Microsoft Meeting, whatever. Yeah, they would misspell it when they typed it in there too, or when texting about trying to set up schedule a visit or something. Visitation, virtual or whatever, a phone call or whatever. I actually, I'm glad everybody stopped by. A little late. I'm finishing up, so you'll have to go back, rewind, replay from the beginning. But man, the gist of it is the reliable witness was not so reliable, and basically, mostly my wife's attorney, my daughter's attorney, and then in third place was my attorney. Um, yeah, took everything apart bit by bit to where, yeah, any any higher court would see that they did serious wrong. Or anyone that has any supervisory over this model court that was used. Yes, it's family court, but it's a model court that just specifically handles between family court and CPS cases. And of course, well, like I said, I didn't get to hear everything, so because I was having issues, had some minor issues tonight. Yeah, and then a week later, covering it up by kidnapping the child, by taking conservatorship, temporary conservatorship, meaning basically any legal conservatorship under the law in just about every state, yeah, it gives them the right to basically take over legal representation or legal access to the child in many ways. Such as if I wanted to file a law, if I wanted to file a civil suit on my daughter's behalf, I wouldn't be able to because of the conservatorship. Uh, but she's home now. Home, just under 60 days in their custody, and they pretty much violated every one of their policies and guidelines on how to operate a case. So, but so far they've gotten away with it. So far, but not. They will be held accountable. They will be held to account. I just hope there are many others that want to see all of those involved held to account. And as I said, it's possibly 15 to 20 people minimum. 15 to 20 different faces I know. And some of them was just because might have been just because they were following orders. Well, following to save uh, the Third Reich regular soldiers or whatever from being prosecuted for war crimes. So, following orders will never save you when they are unlawful, unjust orders. So, well, it's my understanding that the accountability in our matter could there's a possibility that it could go all the way up the thin blue line, the local thin blue line. I personally have not seen the proof, but it's my understanding and what I've heard and from what I've seen that it is it's highly probable that the that it's all not only well, you can easily tell it's all interlinked just by timing of everything. I mean, come on, how convenient it is 2 days before what was a scheduled court date on more than one time, more than once. Conveniently, we were being harassed one way or another by local law enforcement, not county, not state, but local. The same local that I filed a report on an officer that went to IA, and they were well, the results of it, I was told, is that they had to do some retraining. So I don't know if there's anything else involved with it because they wouldn't, of course, not. They don't release that. I'd have to do a FOIA or whatever to try to attempt to see attempt not succeed, but at least attempt to see what was done by IA. But again, all that kind of stuff costs money. But there are others, like I say, and then there's also what they may think they get away with here on Earth, they will not get away with on Judgment Day. And Judgment Day is coming soon. And we're not talking the Terminator version. Although, if you look at Starlink, yeah, aka Skynet, it seems like it. Uh, a good T2000. Well, wait. Well, the main T2000 I know of is a Kenworth big rig. All right. I digress. It's getting late. I wish everyone blessings and yeah, keep a watch out. There will be more information coming. Some of it I have to wait until I'm secure in the knowledge that retaliation, retribution, coercion, harassment doesn't happen to us again. Because some things just seem kind of, yeah, easily fitting into those categories.
Yeah. The mic is hot, the words take flight. Cut through the chaos, pierce the night. A weapon of truth with a righteous glow, defeating the dark where shadows grow. The microphone of mayhem sings so loud, spreading light, breaking through the crowd. Faith in God guides the way we fight. Truth and love ignite the darkest night. Every word a spark, every line a flame, burning deceit, tearing down the blame. With faith as the armor and love as the sword, we march on strong in the name of the Lord. No fear, no falter in this holy quest. The voice of the righteous will never rest. Against the tide of lies we take our stand with the microphone blade.